do remember my great-grandmother, because my parents had me when they were pretty young. And the most amazing thing that I remember about her is we would visit her house. And this is in upstate New York. If some of you, I think, know the area, like around Syracuse, between Syracuse and Binghamton, kind of, in a town called Oneida. And when we would come, inevitably, she would be on her hands and knees in her garden. Her garden was a city block long. To this day, I do not know how she could have tended that garden all by herself. But we would inevitably, come home with a basket full of vegetables, and there, she had this awesome front porch in her house. It's kind of an older home in the city of Oneida, and there would be baskets laid out. I was like, great grandma, what are those? Oh, I give those to the people in the neighborhood. So she kind of kept people in the neighborhood and vegetables, kind of all summer long. And when I went to the University of Rochester for graduate school, and I started out, my dad came to visit, and he was like, Rob, you've got a garden. And I was like, I know, Dad. The landlord let me dig up the earth behind the garage, and that was amazing. The soil was so deep and rich, and earthworms were just popping out. And to this day, I've figured out 9 ways to 10 how to do green beans, because I've never had such a bumper crop of green beans. So I'm sure I got my gardening instincts from my great grandma, who probably got it from her grandmother, who would have been Native American. So that is my personal connection. And I would like to also say that from what I've read about the Cherokee, I think in terms of resilience and being holy, wow. So I think that hopefully we can make that connection today too. Now it's time for Kathy to come up.
Good morning. It is so good to be with you today. I was telling Rob and Doug as I came in that the last time I was at this congregation was when Michael Nelson was installed as the minister. And so that feels like a distant memory. I don't know that I can put a timeline on it, but it feels very good to be back here with you this morning. And I'm sorry that it was such a wild night for everyone. I think that's was a little out of our scope of what we were seeing on our weather last night in Kansas City. So I'm glad you all made it. So let us enter worship with these words. Spirit of life, be present with us this hour. Join us today as we gather in a wider search for truth and purpose. In this quest, may we greet one another with humility and kindness. May we inspire each other to consider new questions and seek deeper meaning. May we cultivate wisdom and compassion. Let all who enter this time of worship see a welcome face, hear a kind word, and find comfort in this community. And may all that is said and done here today open our eyes, our minds, and our hearts to the blessings of caring for one another.
I tend to be a loudmouth. Can you guys hear me okay if I'm kind of at this level? Does anybody want to come up here and maybe, you can't? Okay. Light the chalice for me? Anyone? Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So when Kathy and I were talking about this, putting together this service, I made a connection with a few of the readings that she had picked out from this one, Anna Bladel. Am I pronouncing that correct? And Bladel. So this is Blessed Are We from Anna Bladel. It's a little excerpt from one of her written pieces. Blessed are the baby plants just in my garden, reaching for the sun on this cold, gray, rainy day. Blessed are the letter writers, the card senders. Blessed are you sheltering in place. Blessed are you locked in place. Blessed are you without a safe place. Blessed are you in your tears, your prayers, your fears. Blessed are you in every moment you choose tenderness, softness, gentleness, and care. Blessed are you still savoring delights when and where they are offered and found. Blessed are you in your grieving, you're losing, you're mourning. Blessed are you in your living, you're loving. Blessed are you in your fearing, you're dying. Blessed are you, blessed are you, blessed are we. I forgot to mention today that these lovely flowers that we have here today were from Saturday's memorial service for Chris Ross, and also this lovely painting by Margaret Bowie. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name correctly, and I understand that was a very moving service yesterday. So I think we're going to start out with a hymn. The next hymn in the service is called "Comfort Me," number 1002. It's in the newer teal book that Michael's got there. I'm not sure if we can show this or not. Awesome. So, this is the time for all ages, and I would like to invite up all of the children's and those that are young at heart to come build blocks with me. I got a little started up here. I got started. I know I'm a little scary, but I'm actually a dad too, although my children are a little bit older now. Don't be afraid to knock down what I started here. I'll see my blocks. Yes, get by the microphone. No, that's fine. I'm sure. Yep. Do we have a chance to put up the story? Thank you. One thing I noticed, I was able to build those blocks, but don't worry about knocking mine down. I just got us started. But they're kind of all leaning on each other. And this is the thing that's maybe going to come out in today's story, which is entitled "The Rabbit Listened" by Corey Dorfield. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special. Something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it, cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Roar. This is horrible. I bet you are so angry. Let's shout about it. Grrr, grrr. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew what to do. Jump down, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena, hey, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, gulp, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo goes, tisk, tisk, what a mess, let's throw it all away. And the snake, let's knock it down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually they all left until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, please stay with me. And the rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, and to ruin things for somebody else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. When the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build it all again. I can't wait, Taylor said. It's going to be amazing. Sometimes hugs say more than words. I think we're going to sing the children out. Yeah? Hey, great job. So this morning, our offering is going to go to support Shepherd's Crossing, which I know some of us know a lot more than I do about that. But unfortunately, the speakers, including Beth Klug, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Betty, am I pronouncing that right? Maybe Gretchen Fontanini, they were supposed to come and speak about Shepherd's Crossing, but they were cleaning up debris and were not apparently able to come today. So I think, you know, this is a organization that we have a long history of giving to, but to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, okay, it's a way to help people, for example, that can't make their monthly bills sometimes. Betty, please. Yes. Come on up here. Thank you so much. I should have asked you to do this before.
That's all right. So I think most of you know Shepherd's Crossing has been in Manhattan a long time, established by the churches in the community who said, we need a single place where people can go to get assistance. And the primary mission of Shepherd's Crossing is to provide financial assistance to individuals who are having an emergency in terms of payment of rent, utilities, or being able to pay for prescription medications. And in addition to that, the folks who work with the people that come into Shepherd's Crossing are expected to have a broad knowledge of the other social service agencies in town, be able to make appropriate referrals and help people get hooked into the kinds of services that might be helpful to them along the way. That's the core of Shepherd's Crossing. Outside of Beth, Gretchen, and one other person, all of the services are provided by volunteers. And I can't give you, unfortunately, a number of how many people we serve, but it's significant. And the needs that we're meeting are very strong, and especially, you know, I point out, probably all of you have noticed the increase in your utility bills. When people are living on the edge already, these significant increases in utility bills is something that is really problematic at this point. So your donations will be well used. Thanks.
You rock, Betty. Thank you so much. For the offering today, Renee is going to be playing Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. Thank you, Renee.
Now is the time for us to share our joys and concerns. Here together in person and with those joining us online, we welcome this opportunity to join in our support and our care for each other. For those who wish to, you may write your joy or your concern or your blessing, and Rob will come around to pick those up. And for those online, we encourage you to put your joy or sorrow in the chat, and I think Sarah will be reading those. As we prepare for this time of sharing, let us remember that joy shared doubles and grief shared halves. As you're reflecting on and writing your joy or sorrow, let's take a moment to reflect on this month's theme of blessings. This gives us the opportunity to consider what a blessing means. First, I invite you to consider a blessing as noticing and naming something that we are grateful for, such as, my family is such a blessing, or I feel so blessed to still have a roof over my head, or I feel so blessed for the beautiful sunset I was able to see. We also recognize that in light of the scope and intensity of the events in our country and the world these days, the theme of blessings may sometimes seem like a misfit. However, we can expand this theme to consider blessings in the context of the Leonard Cohen song that Renee just played, Hallelujah. Cohen reminds us of the holy or broken hallelujah. While it's harder to name blessings in times of suffering, these determined or defiant broken hallelujahs are a powerful form of blessing. They are the phoenix rising from the ashes types of blessings. And so today, as we consider blessings and resilience, let us hold in our hearts all who have been victims of what is first and foremost on my mind and heart of the mass shootings that just do not seem to be stopping. By taking action to end this violence, we bless the sorrow and the fear and the anger and confusion and grief of these losses. And may our commitment become a blessing in action as we work to bring peace and justice and healing to all who have been touched by these tragedies.
Thank you, Kathy. So we have kind of three notes. Oh, by the way, did I miss anybody's notes? We have 3 notes for sharing here. I hope it's okay to say who shared these. Is that okay? Okay. Kind of all over the spectrum in terms of from joys to sorrows. Maybe we'll start out here from Gene saying he wants to thank all of the UUs who were here and made welcome all who celebrated Judy Love's life yesterday. I think that was the morning memorial service, right? So thank you. Something that Larry shares, I think we also feel, we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. That's a problem. And he says, I got this from a post by Anna Franklin. I think probably Anna's on Zoom, probably this morning. And then probably more, that's more of a concern or a sorrow that, right? And this is more of a joy coming from Michael, who says, my 50-year-old son has a job and a girlfriend. Yippee. Wonderful. I don't know if there are any, if Sarah can hear me on the Zoom and if she's able to share any of the joys and concerns and blessings that might come up in the chat.
I'd be happy to. We have some joys. Susan Adamchak just returned from a trip where she was able to visit with friends she had not seen in 10 years. She says, what a joy to have deep relationships. Kathy Hedges is happy that Amy and Thurston are on the other side of COVID. Thank goodness for vaccines. They were ill, but not dangerously. And today is Betty Banner's birthday. Happy birthday, Betty. We do have a concern. Kathleen Oldfather reminds us to keep Sandy Nelson in our thoughts. She's out with her dad, who is not doing well. She shared his fortune cookies fortune. It said, things work out best for the people who make the best of the way things work out. He wanted to put it on the refrigerator. I think we have a lot to be grateful for. Joys and concerns we carry in our hearts always. Back to you, Rob.
Yes, we give thanks for those spoken joys, sorrows, and blessings, and also let us remember to hold in our hearts all of those sorrows or joys that may be so close to us that they are hard to speak out loud. May we hold all that was spoken and unspoken close to us as we continue to care for and support one another. And to give us a chance to kind of reflect on and absorb those joys and sorrows, we will sing From You I Receive, number 402, and it's short. We will sing it through 3 times. We're going to be having 2 readings this morning to help us reflect on the theme of resilience and wholeness and blessing. The first one is titled You Precious Mess by the Methodist minister, United Methodist minister, Anna Bladel, the same author that was our chalice reading. Darling one, you precious mess, you exhausted, grieving, hollowed, hallowed, hallelujah of a human. Today, if even for a moment, may you feel your own beating, courageous heart, your chest rising and falling with breath, which is spirit, which is life force, keeping pulse, marking time, finding space. Regardless of how you are feeling, no matter what you are capable of or not. And just for a moment, may you find rest, a bit of ease, held in that sacred rhythm that cannot be without you, because you precious mess, have breath and heart and life force pulsing through you yet.
This is a wonderful reading that Kathy selected, entitled Small Kindnesses. The author's name is Danusha Lamaris. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by, or how strangers still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes. Leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it. To smile at them and for them to smile back. For the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if, though, they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat."
My memory of the early days of the pandemic is a blur. Life changed so quickly for all of us, every day, bringing an overwhelming deluge of information about this virus we have come to know as COVID-19. My work as a chaplain in a large academic health center changed drastically too. Each day, sometimes each hour, bringing new information about how we could keep ourselves and those we were caring for safe. And while these early days were confusing, exhausting, and frankly, a little bit scary, there was an underlying theme which I heard from many disciplines. The theme went something like this: this is the work we have trained for. This is why we are here. We can do this. We've got this. Along with this feeling of flexing our muscles, preparing to give it our best, there was a lot of focus on another key theme that would help us weather this storm. The key was resilience. Being resilient would get us through this pandemic intact. Resilience would guarantee our mental, our physical, and emotional health and give us the stamina we would need. There were many emails that focused on resources that would build and strengthen our resilience. It was all about taking care of ourselves and knowing that resilience would get us through. This focus on resilience was very affirming for me because my call to ministry is based in resilience. It is based in the question of how human beings respond to adversity and suffering. I have wrestled with why some people heal and perhaps even go on to thrive, while others struggle and sometimes crumple under the weight of suffering. My final project in seminary was to write an interdisciplinary paper, all focused around a credo statement. And my credo statement I would like to share with you. It is this: I believe the sacred exists in the resilience of the human spirit and in the connections and relationships each person makes throughout the unique journey of their life. Clearly, resilience is the heart of my ministry, and I have relied heavily on my credo statement to help me understand and assess how patients and their loved ones cope with adversity. My understanding of resilience aligned with what some of the experts tell us. A recent New York Times article titled "How to Build Resilience in Hard Times" asks this question: How, so many of us wonder, are we supposed to cope with so many obstacles blocking our way forward? The article suggests that one way is to call upon an age-old characteristic that enables us to weather adversity: resilience. Resilience is the ability to roll with the punches, because if you're brittle, you'll break. So this article confirmed my understanding that resilience is an individual quality that helps us cope in healthy ways with the storms of adversity and suffering that come with being human. Resilience is what keeps us flexible, adaptive, and healthy. Because resilience is so important to me in my ministry, I was pretty excited when early in the pandemic, the psychiatry department reached out to our spiritual care department to collaborate on a resilience resource for hospital staff. We decided on a format that would allow staff members to phone into a support call that would be co-facilitated by a chaplain and a therapist. I was enthusiastic about providing this support and made sure I had myself scheduled for a number of these call-in times. And then we waited for staff to call in. And we waited. I was really excited when 2 nurses called in on one of my times to co-facilitate. We had a good session with a lot of listening as specific stresses about their work and home lives were shared. However, this is the only call of the many I was signed up for that actually had anyone call in. The other facilitators reported the same lack of participation on their shifts, and after a few weeks, we stopped staffing the calls. We were all pretty disappointed by the lack of participation because we had truly anticipated that there would be lots of staff wanting to talk about the chaos of their professional and personal lives in those early and fast-moving and very unpredictable days of the pandemic. The psychiatry department kept track of the data and then wrote a paper about our effort. The conclusion was this: that there is a derived stigma around healthcare professionals asking for help. There is a fear of what others will think because asking for help may be perceived as a sign of weakness or failure. Being psychologically vulnerable is simply not acceptable in a profession where silent suffering is the expected norm. The reality is that it's hard for those who work in healthcare to ask for help. We are there to help, not to be helped. While the call-in support line wasn't a success, I continued to do what I have always done, which is supporting staff on an informal and regular basis. Staff support has always been part of my job, and it's probably my favorite part of being a chaplain. I treasure the relationships I have built with those who are working out on the nursing units, the nurses and therapists, the unit secretaries and housekeepers and dietary workers, the nurse managers, the physicians. I experience that firsthand derived stigma that makes it hard for staff to ask for help. However, it's the relationships that we already had in place that allowed me to have many, many deep conversations with staff who were really struggling. We knew and trusted each other, which made it easier for these staff members to be open and honest. And through all of these struggles, it was clear that the overwhelming majority of these amazing people were committed to caring for COVID patients, regardless of the risk to themselves or their families. The pandemic made it abundantly clear that it takes an amazing amount of resilience to work in healthcare, especially in our current time. The research shows that you have to have resilience to work in healthcare, even during the best of times, beginning with the rigorous training needed for these jobs. You are then dealing with real-life human beings who are experiencing illness or injury and all of the emotional and spiritual issues that go with that, performing tasks that require your skills, your knowledge, your compassion, and your energy. It truly is work of body, mind, and spirit. One of the nurses I work with said that when her husband drops her off at work in the morning, he doesn't say, "Have a good day." He tells her, "Go kick some ass today." That's the kind of resilience it takes to work in healthcare, especially during a pandemic. I was feeling pretty resilient myself as we got through those early days of the pandemic. And then late one afternoon at the end of a long day, I received a request from a family member to deliver a Bible to one of our patients on one of the COVID ICUs. There was a scarcity of PPE at the time, and so while I wasn't sure if I could go in the room, I wanted to at least deliver the Bible to the nurse, who could then take it in when he or she went to do their care. As I walked onto this unit, it became immediately clear that a patient was in distress. There were many doctors and nurses and team members quickly getting suited up in all of the PPE to go into a patient's room where a number of other healthcare folks were at the bedside already working. The patient, whom I could not even see due to the number of people around the bed, was coding. A code blue had been called. It was loud as members of the team called out information and orders and shouted out their needs. I then saw one of our palliative care doctors at the nurses' station across from this patient's room. She caught my eye and motioned quickly to me, indicating, "Come here, now." She had an iPad in her hand, and there on the screen looking at us were about 5 or 6 very concerned family members. She held the iPad in front of me and said, "Here, talk to the family." I tried to ask who they were, which patient was their loved one, but there wasn't that kind of time. I took a deep breath, mostly to calm myself, and introduced myself to the family. It was so noisy, I could barely hear them. I listened as well as possible, offered words of support, and prayed with this family before handing the iPad back to the doctor. It had, of course, been the family of the patient who was coding. I still get a slightly queasy feeling when I think about this pastoral encounter. I share it to help you what happened during those early days of the pandemic. And perhaps most relevant to my message today, I share this story to help you know what I was feeling: panic. That terrible feeling of knowing it's my job to be the calm, non-anxious presence, while there was no time and no opportunity to learn anything about the patient or those anxious faces on the iPad that was thrust into my hands. No way to provide the care that this family needed and deserved as we tried to bridge that gap with technology. I did not feel flexible and adaptable. I did not feel resilient. I felt like a hollow, exhausted, bewildered mess. This experience left me doubting if I could be an effective chaplain in the midst of the pandemic. I was also starting to wonder if the heart of my ministry, resilience, was adequate for sustaining myself and others as the pandemic continued to pick up speed. Was resilience really the magic panacea we were being told it was? Was I a slacker for not reading all of the resilience tips that the hospital offered? What was I doing wrong? And then a few months ago, I ran across another article on resilience titled "The Dark Side of Resilience." Wow, it was like a light bulb going off in my head. I can't say it was a pleasant aha moment. It was kind of like the adult version of learning that there really isn't a Santa Claus. However, this discovery that there may be more to resilience than I had previously known seemed worth exploring. As I started researching the dark side of resilience, I found a number of articles on this topic, and not surprisingly, many were written in response to the struggles of healthcare workers during the pandemic. Nursing professor and researcher Michael Trainer aligns our current understanding of resilience to the pop psychology self-help movement. He writes, "Nurse researchers understand resilience in purely individualistic terms. They repeat the unempowering mantra of resilience. You can't often choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you react. This results, Trainer says, in an understanding of resilience as an individual effort, which leaves staff traumatized and feeling personally responsible for what are really failures of the institution and society. Another article focused on the resilience of doctors. However, the information is applicable to anyone who works in healthcare. Dr. Colin West, a physician and researcher at the Mayo Clinic, writes this: very commonly, when we talk about physician stress, the first solutions implemented by organizations are improved stress management and resilience training for physicians. But these solutions feel like victim blaming, putting all the responsibility on the physician to improve how they function within their environment without giving the environment any onus to improve itself. When asked how resilience training by medical institutions may be perceived by physicians during the pandemic, West said, physicians are bringing every tool out of our resilience skill set to bear already. Asking physicians to be even more resilient during this time risks being tone deaf. Yes, these insights were pulling the rug out from my previous understanding of resilience. Now I was beginning to understand why we didn't have staff calling into our support calls. I was beginning to see that it made sense that I always scrolled by the resilience resources on the corporate emails. No wonder I, and I'm sure many others, felt a slow burn when we were encouraged over and over to utilize resilience building resources. These efforts, although well-intended, were telling us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. In other words, it was up to us individually to build our resilience so we could weather the storm of the pandemic. I was beginning to see that my understanding of resilience as an individual quality of self-reliance had been pretty shallow. I had also thought if you don't have resilience, or maybe you're just running a little low, you could remedy this by utilizing the plethora of resources to build your resilience. This shallow understanding of resilience ignores the reality that resilience is only one pole on the spectrum of how we cope with adversity. A deeper understanding of resilience means taking a bit of a step back and taking a comprehensive look at how we deal with hardship. So if resilience is at one end of the spectrum of how we adapt and cope, what's at the other end? Some might say failure or weakness. However, I would suggest that vulnerability is the other end of the spectrum. The story I shared earlier about the chaos on the COVID ICU left me feeling unsettled and incompetent. Looking back, I now know that what I was really feeling was my own vulnerability. And the truth is, it never feels very good to feel vulnerable. So why is it important to recognize and honor and learn from our vulnerability? I listened to a podcast where UU theologian Michael Hogue shared his understanding that vulnerability is inherent to being human. This ontological understanding of vulnerability means that to be human is to be vulnerable. So really let that soak in. To be human is to be vulnerable. So we can't help being vulnerable. It's built into the human condition and this world that we live in. The world is filled with things and people we cannot control. And in addition, the hard reality is that much of what happens that causes suffering is random. Hogue also suggests that vulnerability is a precondition for building resilience, meaning that the only way to get to resilience is through our vulnerability. That is the pathway to building resilience. There are many ways to articulate how vulnerability opens us up to a place that is raw and tender, where we really are our most authentic selves, even if it doesn't feel very good. Research professor Brene Brown says vulnerability means, here I am, this is me. Hip hop artist Mary J. Blige says the beauty of vulnerability is that it weeds out all the BS. And songwriter Leonard Cohen, in his song Anthem, says this: there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And Cohen is right. Our vulnerability is the crack that lets the light in. It's in this place of uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure that we really are our most honest. We can't get to healing or resilience without honoring the personal and communal brokenness we have all experienced during this pandemic. It's okay to be confused or scared or hurting or grieving in the midst of the uncertainty we have dealt with and may continue to deal with. I recently talked with a nurse I hadn't seen for a while, and this was just a conversation out on a nursing unit with other people around her. I asked her how she was doing, and she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I've been really anxious, and I'm going to start therapy. I'm really excited about this because I want to feel better, and I want others to know it's okay to ask for help." This nurse was courageous enough to name her brokenness and invite others to do the same. This nurse's honesty about her vulnerability is an example of breaking that derived stigma of silent suffering. This nurse embodied the truth that it is okay to be a courageous, precious mess. The reality of what it means to be human and vulnerable is where I find the blessing. This is where I find the good news. I believe that recognizing our vulnerability can open us to a new and deeper understanding of resilience. I'm not ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I still think resilience is important. However, my understanding of resilience was missing the mark because I have been neglecting the second half of my credo statement, which I'll read for you again. I believe the sacred exists in the resilience of the human spirit and in the connections and relationships each person makes throughout the unique journey of their life. For years, I've been putting more emphasis on the individual resilience of the human spirit and perhaps not paying enough attention to the importance and healing power of relationship, connection, and community. A deeper understanding of resilience is about both the individual and their connections and relationships. As an individual, I cannot abdicate my responsibility to care for myself. I know how important it is for me to identify and engage in good self-care. I could not have gotten through this time of pandemic without taking time to be outside and sitting on my porch swing, taking long walks, hiking and biking, trying to get enough sleep, eating well, and deepening my practice of gratitude. All of these self-care efforts were essential to my resilience and well-being. However, resilience is made whole and complete only when it includes and relies on the loving and mutual relationships between an individual and her or his communities of support. I now know that when I was most vulnerable, what kept me grounded and centered and sane is the support of those I have leaned on over and over. It was the calls I made to my daughter or sister on the way home at the end of particularly bad days. I'm remembering some of those calls. It was my husband, Larry, who gently and patiently listened the many nights over dinner as I shared my feelings and sometimes my tears. It was my fuzzy-faced dog, always there to greet me when I get home. It was my friends and neighbors who listened, took walks with me, and encouraged me. It was my family and friends who sent random cards and left goodies and care packages on my front porch. It was my chaplain colleagues who listened when I needed to debrief, affirming my ministry when I doubted. It was my UU colleagues who realized that my job had changed and reached out with their encouragement and support. It was the nurses and the staff that I work with and the many deep, honest, and vulnerable conversations we shared. It was letting others hold me up when I was a precious mess. So the truth is, it really wasn't all those resilience resources that were offered designed to bolster my individual resilience. It was the support and deep caring, the many small kindnesses that made the difference. Resilience is so much more than an individual quality that keeps us from being brittle and broken. Resilience is a beautiful safety net woven together with love and kindness and caring. We do ourselves and each other a deep disservice when we blame the victim for not being up to the task. Resilience is not about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Resilience is about shining a light on those systems and structures that drain and blame us. Our reading shared earlier reminds us that during this pandemic, we have had so little of each other. We are so far from tribe and fire. More important than ever, resilience is about gathering around and caring for those who are exhausted and grieving and hurting and hollow. This exploration of resilience tells me it's time to revise my credo statement, something I really never planned on doing. And so while I don't have a finished version, and it may keep evolving, right now it might go something like this. I believe the sacred exists in the connections and caring relationships each person makes throughout the unique journey of their life. It is this love and care that is the healing balm for the resilience of the human spirit. We are all resilient and we are all vulnerable. It's okay to be a precious mess. Let us bring ourselves together just as we are and know that we are each our perfect offering. Through tenderly caring for each other, may we find the wholeness of resilience, for this is truly where the holy dwells. May it be so. Amen. And if you would please stand as you are able, we will join in singing number 18, What Wondrous Love. As we conclude our time together this week, please hear these closing words adapted from the Reverend Barbara Hamilton Hallway. Go now in peace, deeply regard each other, speak what each must speak, truly listen to one another. Be ready in every moment to open your own heart, to honor your vulnerability and your resilience. Rejoice in the love and care you both give and receive. Together we are blessed. Together we are holy. Together we are whole. Go in peace.